While there may be occasions where public-private partnerships make sense, they are relatively rare. The problem is an inherent conflict of interest. Whenever the government ties become too strong, how can we expect government officials to regulate that company with any objectivities? Good morning. I'm Ed James, and this is Black Almanac. Businessmen going into business to make money, and the only thing some businessmen will not do to make money is break the law, while politicians, on the other hand, are too often enamored with power, and politicians need money to run for political office. Since politicians have control over their public access, our money, and politicians make laws, businessmen can find cozy relationships with politicians far too convenient. After all, with the right connection, they can steal without being against the law. Today's guest, investigative reporter and publisher of the Phoenix News, John Soucy. Well, I think probably for our audience, I want to introduce you, Mr. Soucy, publisher, investigative reporter who lives in the area, and publisher of Phoenix newspaper. John, how long have you been dealing with the subject at hand today, the public-private partnership between business and development and Sarasota County government?
Well, since 2011. It's been 6 years, basically.
Now, for people who may be new to the area or not familiar with the partnership and what happens, we have to integrate the UTC Mall, the rowing park, and who benefits. Now, initially, let's go, before we get into the rowing park, let's go to the UTC Mall. When anybody who's been in Sarasota any length of time and has traveled I-75 up University Parkway, or living in Lakewood Ranch and trying to get back into Sarasota, or working in Sarasota, trying to go to Lakewood Ranch, has suffered at that interchange. Now, normally, when you build something of a magnitude such as that, or almost anything, you first get the infrastructure in. Is that not true?
Yeah, that usually happens. You put it in, yeah, right.
Now, there are certain other things that the Business and Development wanted from Sarasota County to build that. They wanted some waivers of some of the zoning. And to get that, to achieve that, they promised workforce housing as they would build the mall. What happened to the workforce housing?
They reneged on it. They didn't follow through with it and said it wasn't appropriate for that type of development going on. They didn't think workforce housing would fit into the overall development of the UTC. So they, after promising it, they didn't fulfill their promise.
After signing an agreement?
After signing the agreement with Sarasota County.
And the county gave them the waivers that they wanted?
Yes, all of them needed.
Now,
waivers just for the UTC Mall and other ones, but also projections that will be, other things will be built in the near future there.
And that's when workforce housing was going to come along.
Right.
It's also interesting that a couple of the motels on the north side of University Parkway at the interchange, you need drainage, storm drainage. And the owners of those motels should have paid for the storm drainage. And they didn't have to. Where does the storm drainage going?
Not only for those motels on the north side, also the motels and other malls that Benderson had built, plus the $320 million UTC. They were able to, in agreement with this agreement they have with the county, this private-public partnership, part of the agreement allowed them to use the lake for stormwater facilities, would save them millions of dollars.
It's interesting, public-private partnership, but that partnership seems to be mostly public dollars.
Oh, just about. I would say saying 90% at least, even maybe more. The Benderson part of the private partnership has been very limited, if at any.
When we look at the lake, that's also interesting. The Bendersons gave a piece of land to the county. They did it to a favor to make a little park that happened to be named for the patriarch, the dad,
Nathan
Benderson, who's passed away now. And then there was the lake. Now, the lake had to be dredged to make it suitable for
rowing type of facilities.
the great community facility where young folk could go and row and older folk, anybody. It was going to be a public park with a rowing facility for the community.
$2 million.
Okay, to dredge it.
No, the first thing set up was this, they had an agreement with the county in Benderson for $2 million. Then it went up to the drainage and so forth, and that's when the $19.5 million came in.
And let's talk about the initial. No bid contract also went to Benderson Development to be the supervise the dredging and building of, really the build out of the park.
Right. 19.5 million plus 16% above and beyond the 19.5 million for Benderson to manage the construction. So we're talking another $5 million. And it's interesting, the reason it was 19.5 million, if it went to 20, you'd have to have a public referendum.
Oh yeah. But they got as close as they could to the 20. 19.5, let me see exact. $19,499,399.58. And all to keep from getting public involvement. So you could do a handshake, a couple of campaign contributions. It's also interesting that when you look at over the years, the county commission races since 2011, any races in there, the largest contributors to these county commissioners, all of them, there's not one that was left out, came from Benderson and other developers and their related family members, about 15 different LLCs, all owned by Benderson.
There was, for example, Charles Hines, county commissioner, was given 71 $200 contributions from various Benderson's LLCs to get around the idea of only bidding 100 to it. But that's just one example. All the commissioners, you got not only from Benderson, but other people involved in financial benefits of that park being built. Pat Neal, Carlos Baroof, and a few others.
One of the things that's also interesting, as you look at the contracts, and when they're notarized, I noticed that the notary had State of New York in Erie County, I believe.
Yeah.
Is that where Buffalo is?
Yes, it is. And you'll notice too on those contracts, who's the managing director on those contracts signed between Sarasota County and Benderson, those two contracts totaling $30 million, who signs off on is Daniel Baldorf, who is the attorney for the Bendersons for a number of years, and he signs off on it as the managing director. In those contracts, there's 8 different LLCs, all controlled by Randy Benderson.
Any way you cut it, it's still Benderson.
Yeah, it's the private part of the partnership.
Then, when the lake was dredged, they brought in a company called Dredge America.
Correct.
This is kind of specialty.
Right.
Doing
Worldwide company.
And Benderson, to get paid, now they're getting their 16% for supervising it and selecting the contractor. When it's time to pay the contractor, they go to Sarasota County, and it's all documented.
Oh yeah, it's all there.
Public records for anybody who wants to go look for it. They get there and they sign that all the work has been done on the lake.
Right.
It's completed.
Right.
Give me the final check.
Right.
Now, so it's not an issue. Benderson says it, they get the check. Then the next thing we hear, Dredge America is coming, and they even asked the county attorney, we haven't been paid. What about our money? And the county says, well, we don't have anything to do with it. But then when you go check and see, they said, the county, we've paid Benderson for that. So if you got a beef, it's with Benderson. Dredge America could not get paid until they went all the way Tampa to federal court.
Correct.
To be able to get paid.
Correct.
Also, if they had not been, it sounds like somebody else I know, like the current president, but this is not about them. The county was open up for a lawsuit then, because they should have been supervised and they should have known that the subcontractors had not been paid. Sarasota County continued to be the golden goose for Benderson. What can we do next?
Well, the thing about it, what is this, is that this private-public partnership, and the private part is Benderson. And what happens is that they were supposed to be part of putting money into it. We've got close to $60 to $70 million that's been put in it. Mm-hmm. There's at least $35 million from the county. There's $20 million, I think it's $15 million from the state. There's another $5 million from Sarasota County and Manatee County. We're talking 60 to 70 million. Plus, let's put in that Cattleman extension that was put in there was part of the package of the 19.5 million. So we're talking another 17 million. Mm-hmm. And part of that agreement that Benderson had is that the private sector, Sanka, which is Benderson, mm-hmm. was to raise $22 to $24 million. And there's all types of documentations in local media. So that was supposed to be the responsibility of Benderson once they put in this event that's taking place today.
The World Rowing Championship.
Yes, it's coming in September.
Yes. And it's a national deal.
Right, international.
International, sorry. And they promised them that they would have stands, viewing stands.
Correct. Boathouse.
Viewing
tower, and a number of other things. Mm-hmm. And they promised to raise between $22 and $24 million for that. Now, there isn't any boathouse, a $10 million boathouse. Mm-hmm. There isn't $3 million grandstand. Matter of fact, in yesterday's, I think it was in Thursday's paper, mm-hmm. that they're renting the grandstand. Mm-hmm. They did build the finish tire, the $10 million finish tire, but it was only, Benderson was put under pressure by the state and the county to come up with the money. So instead of $10 million, they came up with $5 million. But get this, it was put out the bid to build that finish tire. Mm-hmm. Tandem Construction got the bid. Paul Blackheader, who was a former project manager for Benderson, and then over at Sanka, which is the managing place of the facility, then decided that Tandem Construction wasn't suitable to build it. So they then turned it over to Benderson Development. So Benderson puts in $5 million for the finish tire, gets paid back the $5 million.
Absolutely.
So what we're having now is this world-class facility which basically is a minor league facility for a worldwide event.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, too, that Sarasota County can come up with this money, and Sarasota County refuses to pay the city of Sarasota its final payment for the CDC in the city of Sarasota. They just refused to pay. They said, we've paid it all.
What
Now,
is also interesting, too, is that there's this big dispute between the city of Sarasota and Sarasota County to extend the CRA in the North Sarasota.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have millions of dollars for this facility that basically is for the Benderson's projects that's built along that place, but yet they can't come up for money for North Sarasota.
when we say North Sarasota, we're talking about North Sarasota because too often people have been led to believe that North Sarasota is Newtown.
Not at all. North Sarasota's other neighborhoods, not only Newtown,
Bayou
Park
Oaks.
East, Bayou Oaks, Central Coconut, working class neighborhoods in North Sarasota. Which is interesting too, is that when they built Cattleman Extension, that wasn't scheduled to be built when it was. They moved it ahead of the schedule. But for how long, as you know, you live in the neighborhood, how long has it been, and it still hasn't been completed, to do between US 301 and Myrtle, which goes by Booker High School?
Yes.
Years and years, and still hasn't been completed.
Right.
But yet you can put $17 million for Randy Benderson to put in Cattleman Extension so they can go to his mall. The thing about it, Dr. James, is this deal between Sarasota County and Randy Benderson basically is for the financial gain of Randy Benderson and his malls and things of that sort. If the park wasn't built, and this is documented, the Tupman brothers were not going to be involved with that facility. Once the park was put in, they thought they'd bring all these people from out the world and they'd shop there. So if the rowing park isn't built,
And live in the hotels.
the hotels belong to Randy Benderson. If the rowing facility isn't built, UTC Mall isn't built. The UTC Mall isn't built. You don't have a $90 million interchange in there. So we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in this event. And all this rowing park is just for the benefit of Randy Benderson and his properties. And this facility, they promised this international event for a major league facility, it is not there. I wish people would get online and see the video that the Bendersons produced and sent to International Rowing Federation, what they were going to produce. It's scandalous what they produced and what they're actually delivering. And the county knows it, and everybody else knows it. There was a comment by Nancy Dieter when she was a state senator, when they came to the state, when she was a state senator asking for $11 million. Additional. She says this is sounding more and more like corporate welfare. This is exactly what it is. It's a pay-to-play corporate welfare scheme between Randy Benderson and Sarasota County. And nobody's paying attention to this. It's a disgrace.
When you talk about North Sarasota and the neighborhoods, and there's never any money for it, let's talk about Myrtle. From 301 to Old Bradenton Road.
Bradenton Road.
Kids walk along that street that had a ditch on both sides, no lights. The community asked over and over and over again to get that fixed. Folk coming to Booker High School to go to football games, no lights along the street. Driving cars, no lights. Neighborhood people walking, ditch on the side. And then when you go to the county commission, they said, there's no money for that. Then they put money there after hearing after hearing after hearing. And then they only decide, well, we'll put lights on one side of the street. Or we'll cover one side of them. They So the county, you know, I hate to say this, but race and class, that rowing facility is about race and class.
No doubt whatsoever.
The lack of facilities for school children, neighborhood school children who live in the neighborhood, is about race and class.
No doubt.
When you go to talk about the rest of the money in agreement between the county and city, that would be used for Robert L. Taylor, which is not a local facility.
No, not at all. 70% of the facility people come from outside that area.
Yeah. But when you ask for the money, here again, race and class.
Right.
Now, and I, for one, am sick and tired of every time race is involved and someone tells the truth, then it's playing the race card.
Exactly.
And that is not the case. What
Not
is
at
it?
all.
How many of all the people who go to Nathan Benderson Park, how many people of color work at Nathan Benderson Park?
Take a look at the staff. Not one. Not one. Take a look at the staff. And the thing about it, those staff is being paid by Sarasota County.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the salaries go from $190,000 to $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's 9 or 10 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Not one.
Mm-hmm.
Not one, a minority.
And not only does the county pay that, they also are still trying to work out an arrangement so that the county can get some return, but the parking fees and everything that goes with it, that goes to Sanka, which is in effect Benderson.
Exactly, yeah. Whatever denying they say they did, but it's Benderson. You know, the interesting thing about it is that when they originally went to the state to get the money for the park, the $10 million, it was turned down by Governor Scott. He said it was a turkey. A few months later, a little over, maybe a year, not more than a year, all of a sudden there's a $100,000 contribution from Randy Benderson, another one from Pat Neal. All of a sudden it isn't a turkey. So he agrees to support this project, if indeed, but it puts a clawback in this.
And for those who are not familiar with clawback, is when the county gives you, in this case, gives you money because you have promised that you're going to do a particular project, a particular way that's going to benefit the county, and you don't do it, you claw back the money that they've already given out to you.
Right. This is what, according to Governor Scott, and the quotes in here, I don't know, it's there if anyone wants to look it out. The reason they gave it, because they promised, this is part of the public partnership. This was put together by an individual, a consultant by the name of Donna Alden. And she did a study on this and what this park will give, gave it to the governor. He looked at it and he said, this is great, I'm going to agree. And this is what they promised to do. The rowing center would generate $209 million in annual spending, attract 750,000 new tourists, and provide $12.5 million in annual sales tax revenue. This is ridiculous. Even I talked to the head of the Sarasota tourist thing,
Visitor Bureau?
Visitor Bureau, with Miss Haley.
Virginia Haley.
Virginia Haley, and she agreed. These figures, I don't know where these figures came from. So if they don't fulfill these figures, Sarasota County should be responsible for the $10 million that pay back to the state.
It's also interesting, if you look at the contracts between the county and Benderson, where there's money involved, they turn around checks for Benderson in 2 days.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, usually when you submit something to the county, and I've talked to a number of vendors, and they talked about it. When you submit something to county, sometimes it takes 6, 7 months sometimes. When it was Benderson, and the documentation is there. Benderson provides the documentation, which within days, the money went to Benderson Development. It's all documented. But other vendors couldn't wait 4, 5, 6, 7 months, they get it. Benderson controls Sarasota County Commission. If anybody denies it, all you got to do is take a look at it. And here's the thing, let me say this.
Look at the campaign contribution.
And how they're paying, it's pretty cheap, basically. $200 contributions, maybe $6,000, $7,000 to a candidate. And they're buying these county commissioners very cheap. And let me say this too, the problem here within Sarasota County is we need a two-party system, an effective two-party system. And I've been very vocal about this, and anybody else, is that we need a strong Democratic Party, which we do not have in Sarasota County. None of these issues are being addressed. This issue with the Benderson Park should have been on the #1 priority, especially with the money coming from the state. There's other issues with it. And I'm a strong advocate that we need a two-party system within Sarasota County. We don't have it. They get into situations like this and bring those issues up.
Well, in this last minute we have, I'd like to remind our viewers, the documents there, you have a right to see them. Go and request the documents. Pages and pages and pages of documents. But they all say, we will do this, and somehow when the time comes to do this, they said, well, we found that won't work. And so, just have it. In the last 30 seconds, Mr. Sousa, would you like to have any closing comments for our audience?
Well, what's taking place with this is that the public has to realize what's taking place with it. One of the problems, and you're one of the few that's brought this up, the media in Sarasota hasn't covered any of this. But other than that, there has been nothing but all this has been puff. And we've got an international event coming here. But we have facilities, our minor league. Those facilities that Benderson promised aren't there. And the return on this, they promised, again, $22 to $24 million. Nowhere near that. This is a private-public partnership between Randy Benderson, Sarasota County, and Randy Benderson has put nothing into this.
Well, again, I want to thank you for coming and sharing with our viewers. And
I want to thank you, too, for having me on. One of the few that's looking at this.
As always, have a great day, Suncoast.
This is an important medical announcement. Bard IVC filters have been linked to punctured veins and problems with migration. Anyone who's received a Bard IVC filter must receive medical monitoring and may be entitled to substantial compensation. If you have the Bard Recovery G2 or G2 Express filter, you are in a class of patients who should be compensated for some expenses. Call now for a free assessment of your case and potential money damages. This call is confidential. There's no cost and you may be eligible. Juries have awarded millions of dollars to people who should have been warned about the risks of the Bard IVC filters. Call the IVC Filter Hotline if you or a loved one has received an IVC filter and experienced a vein puncture or required medical monitoring. You must call now.
Call 800-329-3089, 800-329-3089.